Podcast is not dead. We are back and ready to roll in a new year. It is episode 55 of the Shutdown Inning Podcast. And my apologies because we are doing our first episode of the new year in the second month of the new year. So is it even a new year anymore? With my co-host Tylor Hall. What's up, Tyler?
Hey, everybody, the Tim Lincecum edition of the shutting number 55. Yeah, I mean, it still is technically a new year it's a new year for the shutdown inning. It's our first time in 2025. Yeah, I know we've both been pretty busy, had a lot of stuff going on, and we've been busier than MLB teams this offseason. I'll put it that way.
That's right.
Most of them.
Yeah, no, that's right. There have been teams that have not done anything, and I was going to put them as a down today, for the segment that we usually do, and I decided against it because I thought of some other stuff. But those teams need to step it up, and it's been an interesting offseason so far. I can't wait to hop into it. There are some things that we missed that we kind of want to drive by per se. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, some quick hits, we're calling them.
yeah, quick hits. Hopefully, that's
Uh,
not like a regular segment on the show, because then that
No,
would.
well, I think we're gonna get back in the groove of it, you know.
Yes,
Pitchers and
yes.
catchers report next week. We'll have some actual baseball to look at and talk about. But as Steven said, it has been a little while since we recorded, so just a couple major things that we feel like we have to talk about. One, Juan Soto spurning the Mets, going across the city of New York to join the Mets. I mean, I thought he was gonna stay a Yankee, Steven.
Um,
And I
I,
know
I
you did not. I think, did you have him going to the Mets on our big board?
I can't remember where I had him go. No, I think I had him staying in New York too. Um, but it's just kind of interesting the way the whole thing went down because there was stuff that leaked out that was like very interesting about the suites and the way it sounded like he didn't talk to any of his Yankee teammates during that entire process. And look, like it looks like the Mets did what they did everything possible to sway him. And I think that's one of those things where it's like money's not going to be an issue with Steve Cohen. Like if you look at it, he made more money than any of the other owners last year with his hedge fund company. So that's not an issue. And if there's any team that has a chance to be the next coming of the Dodgers in their model, it's the Mets because of the money. But I think the fact that they kind of just played footsies with Pete Alonso suggests maybe they don't have that same mentality because I think the Dodgers would have just paid him. But no, it's a good place for him, and whenever a deal like this happens, it's almost like okay, this is where Juan Soto is going to go into the Hall of Fame in a Mets jersey. Like
Right.
that's something that always comes to mind. And I don't think it's just him that they needed, but 700 something million dollars. I mean, it's a pretty significant chunk of change, and
Yeah. I was just
it's
going to say,
yeah.
too, like you mentioned how money's not an issue for Cohen. It's also not going to be an issue for Juan Soto,
Yeah.
even if he took the Yankees deal. So, I mean, when you kind of take that out of it, like he's set for life, his grandkids, his great grandkids set for life. So I think that's where the suites and the treatment of his family kind of came in. There was another story that came out that like security had been kind of inconsiderate to his family at least one game at Yankee Stadium. And so, if another team just happens to be across town and says, we'll give you a suite, we'll take care of your family, and so money's not really an issue anymore. How your friends and family are treated when they come to support you at the game is. And so I see how that could be a major thing, where to us, we're like, whatever, man, you're making 700 million. Well, he's going to make that regardless of where he goes. So that's where those other things can kind of come into play and influence a decision. And that's why he's going to be wearing blue and orange.
Yeah, and one thing we forget about free agency is like, it's a lot of money regardless of where he was going to go. Um, and when it's that much money, sometimes like 10, 15 million dollars, 20 million dollars, the little things do make a difference, right? If a team has offered, 20, 15 million dollars less than another team, maybe something like the security situation and, the suites and the private jet, maybe that does make a difference. And we're forgetting sometimes with these players that there's other things that come into consideration. There's family, there's, you're making a life decision on where you want your reputation to be, where you want your family to be, where you're going to spend the next 15 years of your life. I mean, I'd want to make the right decision too. So he was going to
Yeah.
get generational. I mean, he already had generational money, but he was going to get generational money
Yeah.
regardless. So,
Yeah, and
um,
that's yeah, I mean that's where Juan Soto was just kind of a unicorn in so many ways. The size of the contract, but like you just said, the duration of the contract too. He's not signing like even like a 6 or 7 year deal is a long-term deal. Now double that and tack on another couple years. That's how long of a decision Juan Soto had to look at. He's got, if he's got kids or not, they're going to be almost out of high school by the time this contract's up. This is where his family's going to be raised. So, great points.
yeah, and when are we going to find another free agent like him who is as young as him, who is going to get paid that? Like, I mean, he's also set the market for Kyle Tucker, who is going to be 28, 20, like not the same type of player, but Kyle Tucker's going to look at that contract and go, wait, let me get in on that action.
Yeah,
And,
no way. Vlad Guerrero Jr. too. I mean, I think his asking price for an extension with the Blue Jays went up after he saw what Soto got.
and they're great players, but like the level of free agency that like Harper had in relative to when he was a free agent. Like I know that the money figures are different, but that was, 7 years
No,
ago or whatever it is now.
yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think it's going to be a long time because most players don't start as young as Soto did. But then also, most guys that are that caliber coming up with a team, they're getting locked up, through arbitration plus a few years. You look at Acuna, Bobby Witt Jr., all these guys are not hitting free agency until they're at 30 or a little after 30 now. So all these top players aren't really getting that chance at free agency. So I think it will be a long time until we see another, you know, unicorn, free agent like Soto.
no, without a doubt. And then there's a few other moves that happened. Corbin Burns, the top right-handed pitcher on the open market, he signs a deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Um, I can't remember. It was just over 200 million, right? For
Yeah.
him. And he that was kind of an interesting team for him to go to. I don't think anybody really had the Diamondbacks
No.
except someone on our Giants chatter list, Doug.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was Doug. Great call. But it kind of reminds me, I'm kind of in my head, I keep calling it like Zach Greinke 2.0, just like
Yeah.
one of the top pitchers on the market. A lot of people think he's going to the Giants. And then out of nowhere, here come the Diamondbacks, and he's in Arizona now. So,
Yep.
it's a great pickup for Arizona. They were in the World Series in the 2023 season. They have a great lineup. And so if they can, lock it down with some starting pitching, another, those things off the field, like we just talked about too, Burns and his wife, I think they just had twins, just bought a house in the Scottsdale, Phoenix area, somewhere down there in Arizona. And so I think that came into play too for Burns. And so like you said, kind of came out of nowhere, but kind of makes sense for both sides.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, the Diamondbacks have to realize that if they end up being a team that could compete every single year, which, maybe they're on that track already. I think they are on that track already. The track record proves it. Um, they could be a very viable destination because of the fact that players live in the vicinity around, that
Yeah.
area. It's Florida and in Arizona, just players are all over the place there. And especially when players don't want to pack up for spring training too much and they're close to home, it's gonna be a destination, and it already is a destination for guys that want to kind of be close and not want to move around too much. So it's one of those destinations that the taxes were another thing that was talked about with him. So it's definitely interesting. I want to see what the future of those players who live in Arizona, what they're gonna think moving
Yeah.
forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, the taxes, like you said, I think Florida has no income tax, state income tax. Arizona, it looks like it's very low. It looks like it's a flat 2.5%, whereas in California, I think it's like 14.4. So that's a big chunk of change, just comparing that to California, of course. But like you said, they live here in the off season partially for those tax reasons, but then, especially if you have kids, you're not packing up and saying, all right, see you in a few months in our home city or wherever it is. You're home in Arizona, in Florida all year round. So it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, we'll see how this shakes out for the Diamondbacks, but I think that puts them solidly in a wild card spot for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a tough division. We have a lot of Giants listeners and they're kind of freaking out about a possible fourth place finish, but you got to be realistic here when thinking about that National League West. And speaking of the Giants, that's a nice segue. Uh, they made a move when we were gone. They signed 41-year-old right-hander Justin Verlander, who is going to get a 1-year deal worth $15 million dollars, and he is their addition to their starting rotation. Buster Posey has indicated that they're going to make no more moves outside of Verlander to bolster that rotation. So he is it. Coming off not a great year, probably the worst statistical year of his career. Battled through some neck injuries, but he's feeling good. And Tyler, I had tweeted a few days before, and I got a lot of blowback from this. From shout out to a friend of the show, Andrew Pasquini, who specifically was the one that I got blowback from. I said that I think it would
First
be
ever guest of the Shutdown Inning, Andrew
first ever
Pasquini.
guest. Yeah, quite the title. I said that it would be fun for the Giants to go out and get one of the older guys, Kershaw, Scherzer, Verlander. And listen, I know that you're not going to get 20 starts from Justin Verlander or 150 innings from Justin Verlander.
Or will you?
I don't, it's a good question.
I think
But
20 starts, they could get 20 starts out of him.
20 starts. But I just said it would be fun. Sometimes I like stuff for the plot, right? It couldn't there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal, $15 million, who cares? Like, so I like it.
I mean, yeah, I think I get both sides. I think Giants fans they just want to get better. That the Giants have been kind of at the bottom of the division or next to the bottom thanks to the Rockies for a while now. And they want to be good. And if it's like a fun signing that helps that, then cool. But like they want signings to make the team better, not just have fun. But to your point, like we just talked about, it's a tough division. They're probably a third or fourth place team at best. Maybe that includes like a third wild card spot. And so I think partially too, kind of tying this all in together to what we've said, you said, Buster said this might be all they do, at least as the rotation is involved. He wants to see what the kids can do. I mean, what better guy to have around a bunch of young guys that you're excited about than a slam dunk Hall of Fame first ballot guy who's been around for a couple decades, won World Series, won Cy Youngs, won MVPs, to have around a young staff. So like you said, there's no bad 1-year contract. Shout out to Ben Verlander, who you and I had some interaction with after you tweeted that. And I agree, it can't hurt the Giants to have Justin Verlander around.
Yeah, no, fifth grade me would have been freaking out because you're gonna hate me for this, Tyler, but fifth grade was the grade I was in when, you know, the home runs against Pablo Sandoval hit the home runs against them in game one of the World Series. So
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Wow, I was not in fifth grade. I was in fifth grade when Justin Verlander was in fifth grade, probably. Um, or he
No,
might have
but
been in
no,
sixth. But
yeah, no, and the other part of what I was gonna say, it is fun, but this could be a stretch. I think that there's something in the tank of Justin Verlander. Like I think that you might be able to get some impact there. Um, the level of impact, I don't know. And for the people saying that this is going to take away innings from Hayden Birdsong, Kyle Harrison, Landon Roop, Carson Whisenhunt, those guys, no. The answer is no. Like
yeah,
there's
those
going to be
guys, like,
innings.
yeah, maybe Birdsong is going to have a lot of innings, but like we said, is Verlander going to make 20 starts? So that frees up about 13 or 14 just for his rotation spot. Yeah, I'm not really too worried about it taking innings away from
Yeah.
anybody. If
There's going to be
anything,
innings to go
yeah, I mean,
across.
yeah, you move Hicks back to the bullpen
Yep.
after his first half again or whatever, and you've got innings for those young guys. Maybe you trade Verlander at the deadline if he's bounced back, and I agree with you. I do think I don't know if it'll be prime Verlander, but This guy, he doesn't want to go out with a whimper. He's in his mind thinks he could pitch another 2 or 3 years, not necessarily all with the Giants, because he would really like to get to 300 wins, and I think he's like 40 shy or so. Um, and just before last year, he was, I think, was he Cy Young in 23? I think
22.
22. So I mean, we're not that far off of him being a dominant pitcher. So if he can just be even just a standard number 3 starter for the Giants, which is well within the realm of possibility for him, then you add on, the intangibles of having him around your staff. I'm not opposed to this deal at all.
Yeah, no, and it's that if you think he's going to block people, just watch a Major League Baseball season and watch the way it plays out. And that's what I would tell people. And he's a guy who said that he's wanted to pitch into his 40s for a long time now. And you don't say you're going to pitch into your 40s without being determined to back that up, right?
Yeah.
So if it's been on his head, if it's been in his head, he's probably been working towards it. So that's one thing. And again, I think that there might be some impact. I'm not gonna I can't bet against him. He's not someone who, aside from the injuries and the bad numbers, like again, like you said, it's not too far away from him being really, really solid. So I think that's the positive of this entire thing, for sure. But all right. Moving on, there is a Hall of Fame announcement. We love to cover the Hall of Fame very vigorously on this show, and we're going to cover it again here. There was 3 announced that were inducted by the baseball writers. Of course, there's 2 more that are going to be going in. Dave Parker and Richie Allen,
Yeah.
Dick Allen, better known as. And joining those 2, Ichiro Suzuki, CC Sabathia, Billy Wagner. And let me just say, there's one guy that didn't vote for Ichiro Suzuki on this Hall of Fame. And Baseball Writers of America, they get a vote for the Hall of Fame. You and I have gone back and forth about this. For the non-controversial guys, I think that they've done a great job. Okay.
Yeah.
Why isn't this vote public? Why is there not a name attached to this one errant vote? It drives me
Yeah.
insane that in journalism we preach transparency, we preach truth, and we have to have private ballots for the Hall of Fame voting. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm
Yeah.
so down on that guy. But anyways, congrats to those 3.
Yeah, I mean they've released, I think they ended up having like 80. It's up to each writer if they want it to be public, and I think it was like 82% made their ballot public. I mean, so I think just make them all public.
Yeah.
You should be able to, if you're casting a vote for something like this, you should be able to, kind of face the heat or defend your ballot and not just kind of hide behind it. I couldn't believe that he missed by 1 vote. It's like, what part of the game, what could Ichiro have done to help you convince you that he was a Hall of Famer? And, I think I've said it before on here. I know I've told you before, Stephen, but I almost think like if you don't vote for a guy that gets over like 95%, or you vote for a guy who gets under 5%, you at least need your vote like suspended for a year
I
or
agree.
something, because obviously you're not taking the process seriously. If you're voting for guys that 300 other voters don't even consider, or you're not voting for a guy that every other person, thinks is a Hall of Famer, there's obviously something wrong in your spectrum of what you think a Hall of Famer is. And so you need to have a timeout and think about it.
Yeah, no, it's have a time out and think about it. But I do want to give those 3 kind of their flowers real quick. And Andrew Jones, Chase Utley, Andy Pettit, they all kind of made, pretty legit jumps.
I think
And Carlos
Beltran was only a few votes out.
Yeah, he
So
was the one I forget. Beltran hit 69, 68, 70%, something like that.
yeah,
So
right around there. So I mean, that's basically like once you get to that percentage, you're gonna get in. It's just a matter of when.
yeah, no, Beltran will get in and
And it'll be interesting what happens next year, Steven. Sorry if I cut you off there, but
oh
like
yeah.
the next year's incoming crop on the ballot is not good. And I mean that as far as like Hall of Fame consideration. Obviously, they're great baseball players. They're going to be on a Hall of Fame ballot, so they had great careers. I don't think there's a single Hall of Famer coming in on this ballot. Maybe Cole Hamels will probably get the most support out of the group, but I mean, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. So it'll be interesting to see what that kind of weak incoming crop, and it's really not good for another couple years. I think the year after, I think Buster's on there, but it's not really anyone else of note. The year after that's Yachty and maybe a couple other people. So, kind of this log jam of your Abreus, your Beltrons, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's kind of just like a hold your breath until like Miguel Cabrera Pujols, those guys like enter into the fray.
Hmm.
So, um, we'll see what happens there. But I, and by the way, speaking of Hamels, like he might be looked at differently because of the era in which he pitched. And for pitchers, I don't know what to think for some of the new pitchers coming. And since we recorded when we did the Hall of Fame thing, I changed my mind on Felix Hernandez. Um, I think in the era in which he pitched, um, the standards have since lowered a little bit, and the longevity is, I guess still important, but less. And starting pitchers, I think if we judge starting pitchers the way we've always judged starting pitchers, there's going to be no starting pitchers inducted in the next 25 years. So we need to
Yeah.
change our standards to keep up with the Joneses a little bit. That's what I think.
Yeah, because like we just talked about Verlander hoping to pitch until he's like 45 to get to 300 wins, which used to be like the cutoff.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely something there. I know I've said it before too. Like one of my initial criteria, obviously look more into it, but like, did I go to the ballpark to see that guy? And
Hmm.
I think for starting pitchers, especially in this era that we're kind of coming into, that might be kind of and not like the end all be all, but kind of like the first initial mindset. For how many years was like Felix Hernandez or Cole Hamels pitching, and you're like, ooh, the Phillies or the Mariners are coming to town. This guy's starting on Friday night. I want to try to get out to the ballpark to see him pitch in person. Um, just as kind of like a starting point of should I consider this guy? And then kind of look at the you know chips from there, see where they
Yeah.
fall.
And I wouldn't, for the record, I would not vote for Cole Hamels, but yeah, I think he was less of a force for the period of time that Felix was. And I think Felix has the significance of being a one-team guy and being just, it's funny. I had this conversation with somebody like the amount of really, really good players the Mariners have had in contrast to their actual performance and like lack of championship is hilarious. They have icons in that organization.
Yeah,
And it's like weird that like some of them just didn't overlap. Like Griffey and Randy Johnson never played with Ichiro and like that sort of thing. But they've had some huge names play. And speaking of Ichiro, we should start giving them their flowers. Just again, the first Japanese position player to come over. He is the global hit king, over 300 hits in the United States.
even
Came
over
over,
3,000 even.
yeah. Did I say 300?
Yeah,
Oh my God, yeah, 3,000 hits. He had 300 in like a year and a
yeah. What
half.
was it like two? What was his hits
Oh, oh
record?
04 was like
Yeah,
262, I think.
yeah. That's. I mean, if you think about that, that is just ridiculous. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, 262. So that's like over a hit and a half a game.
yeah. No, it's insane, and it's funny because at 95.7 The Game, I produced the morning show on Saturday mornings from 9 to 12. It's called during the Warrior season. It's called the Warriors This Week, and then
Nice plug.
yeah, nice plug. And then when the Warriors are not in season, it's just a general sports show. And the host of the show, one of the hosts of the show's name is Dan Devone, and he was a TV guy in Seattle for like 20 years. And I asked Dan because he was in Seattle when Ichiro came up. I was like, was there any doubt about him? And he was like, yeah, it was insane. Like, imagine being the first guy to come over from Japan. We had seen pitchers before, but they just didn't know if he would hit big league pitching. And like, I think if I'm not mistaken, there was like hesitancy, in spring training. Like his numbers weren't great. Um, but yeah, no, he's just a guy who he was a character. Just signified
Some
just a
great,
lot of
great quotes
great
from
quotes. The
Ichiro.
Bob Costas one always comes to mind.
Or like the Who's Tom Brady?
Who's Tom Brady? That's a great story. Um, he spoke great English, but of course, wanted to be respectful and still used a translator. And the one thing I remember about Ichiro, and it was later in his career with the Marlins. Um, there's a fly ball. Okay, I think Joaquin Arias was at second base. This is such a very and some people listening might remember because they've seen the highlight on YouTube or whatever. But I was at this game. Joaquin Arias was at second base. It was late in the game, and Gregor Blanco hits a fly ball to right field, and this ball is cranked. And Arias, or not Arias, Ichiro's going back, and he's like, it looks like he's camped under it, like, lining up, ready to catch it. Arias is going to
Yeah.
tag, and the ball goes over his head, hits the bottom of the wall. Ichiro completely dekes Arias, and Arias has to stop at third. The ball carried right to Ichiro, so he was faking that he was going to catch it, and it went off the wall. Um, just a really smart player, and smart in the sense that you've probably heard the stories, Tyler. He could have homered whenever he wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
So
people have said he had like the most electric batting practices, some of the most electric batting practices that like, people who cover the game have ever seen.
yeah, yeah, and just a guy who was an incredible defensive outfielder, an incredible arm, like very early in his career and in his rookie season throughout what Terrence Long at third base, trying to go for third. So, yeah, hats off to Ichiro.
One last thing on Ichiro I looked up really
Yeah.
quick. So in that '04 season when he had a 262 hits, he had a 9.2 WAR. Guess where he finished in MVP voting?
In what year?
'04.
Oh,
His
it's midst of the
his
steroid era. Fifth.
seventh.
That's insane.
He had a 9.2 WAR. Vlad Guerrero won it with a 5.6. Again, WAR's not end all be all, but you kind of see the value, especially
Yeah.
in like 1 year. Sheffield got second with 4.2. Manny and Ortiz got third and fourth, both at like 4.1, 4.3. So each row was like more than double most of these guys in WAR and finished well below them in MVP voting.
Insane. So
But yeah, I mean, obviously, hell of a career. And everyone except one person in America thinks he's a Hall of Famer. Just happens to be that one person had a vote, apparently.
share your name. Share your name.
Ichiro
Give it
offered to buy you a drink, man. Like, just come out, televise that discussion.
Yeah. Why do I feel like Ichiro's gonna like jump him or something like
uh,
that? Anyways,
yeah.
yeah,
So moving on to Sabathia. I
yeah,
mean,
Vallejo's own.
yeah, Northern California getting in the hall. One thing I really enjoyed about Sabathia getting in was like if you followed him or on X or Twitter, like after he got the call, he was like a little kid celebrating like winning a Little League World Series game or something. He was just like, thanking everybody, just so excited, making shout outs to Vallejo, to all the teams he played for, to his teammates. Like we're talking like, just tweet after tweet of just being an ecstatic, you know, to achieve a dream that he had. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, really well deserved, and he's up there among like some of the top left-handed pitchers that have ever played the game. Just his career was interesting because he went through a lot of things. He was a power pitcher, and then he had to reinvent himself a few times. He had the addiction struggles that he was open with. And he was a part of that incredible deadline deal that the Brewers had where they acquired him, and that was a big deal from Cleveland, and got them over the hump and into the postseason. An incredible second half.
Yeah, and he just
Um,
like, what was crazy about that is like he was a free agent after that year, but he didn't worry about his arm. He was out there. He threw 130 innings in 17 starts for the Brewers.
insane, insane. That's one of the best deadline deals of all time. One of the best rentals of all time. And it's
For
like, who
sure.
cares if he didn't sign back? I mean, that guy gave it his all, and um, I'll remember him as a Yankee, of course. Just it's just me in my era, but um, yeah, congrats to CC, and then Billy Wagner, long time coming. Highest strikeout rate in baseball history. The argument is he didn't throw enough innings, he didn't pitch enough games, but he is a Hall of Famer, and I almost said Hall of Famer for the first time in his career, but that's not how it works. He's a Hall of Famer, and yeah, long time
And we don't
coming.
know. Maybe he's in like like the Bay Area Hall of Fame for wherever he's from,
Yeah,
so maybe
his
he's
high
not a
school Hall of Fame.
exactly. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, he had electric stuff. He got in on his last year of eligibility. Um, but it doesn't matter. A plaque's a plaque in Cooperstown, and he's going. And relievers are always kind of weird voting for, just because they're all used different and have different things that going for them. But his strikeouts per nine, his they're just ridiculous, and you know he had the stuff, and now he's got a bust in Cooperstown.
He's got a bust in Cooperstown. What a funny word, bust is insane. Um, anyhow, let's talk about the Dodgers. That was a groan
Yeah,
for the ages right there.
this is our regular Dodgers segment of the show, just because they always they're always signing somebody. So since we last recorded, they've essentially locked up an all-star bullpen. They've signed Blake Treinen, Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates. They also added Michael Conforto to their outfield, and they signed Roki Sasaki, like the worst kept secret in international signing history.
Yeah, what
Uh,
is with that? That's an insane process.
yeah, something's got to change there. Like, why not just like have a draft or something? The whole pool money thing too is weird. Like, just have an international draft or something too. Maybe you make that one a lottery, since the regular one is based off of, I don't know. But again, I mean, we both said it. They're not breaking any rules. They're making money. They're spending money. I wish more teams were like that. I think we'll talk about that to an extent in a little bit. Um, but I mean, they're building a super team. Like, I can't think of a team like, even and again, I don't want to blow up too many of our future discussion points here, but I don't know, and I don't think in my lifetime I've seen a team put together like this, where it's just like, a rotation full of all stars, bullpen full of all stars, lineup full of all stars. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, and not just that, but just how popular they are around the sport. And how popular the players are. And Mookie Betts is this future Hall of Famer with the podcast, and Shohei Ohtani and Sasaki um and
Yamamoto.
Yamamoto, they're bringing in endorsements from Japan, and the Dodgers got like three more endorsements, big time endorsements this offseason alone. So they have just name recognition all over the place, and they're not afraid. They're not afraid to spend money, and I can't blame them. There's a lot of people in baseball that think that this is bad for the sport, but what does every single fan want from their team? They want their owner to
Memories.
spend
Oh,
money. What did you say?
memories.
Memories. Yeah, the memory making business. Yeah, and memories is good too, but I think memories come
No,
with,
but you had the right answer.
yeah, they want their, and like for example, the Orioles, they have a new owner, and everybody's like, this is going to be such a great thing. We're bringing in a new owner. Why were they not in the Corbin Burns discussion? What are we doing? Why isn't Adley Rutschman locked up? Why isn't, I just, and it just doesn't make much sense to me. We had even another owner say, the Cubs owner who looks like Ted Cruz, Tom Ricketts, he says that he says that we got to break even, and the Dodgers are not. Maybe they won't break even, maybe they will. I wouldn't be shocked if they will, because that's just the aura that they have right now. Anything good is going to happen to them. Um, but it's like anybody that has ever been a fan of a team wants what the Dodgers have, and the fact that they don't have it, that's why they're throwing a fit. Now, what I will say is that the deferrals are kind of an issue, and it's a
Yeah.
loophole that maybe needs to be solved. And I don't know how you regulate that or how you manage that, but that maybe is a little concerning. But at the same time, like teams could do that too, and they haven't. But
Yeah, I think regarding the deferrals, I think they need to be a little more transparent with how it hits the luxury tax, because they're obviously skirting some of that, because it's only like a percentage. Like, Otani's not hitting the luxury tax for like 2 million this year, but he's also not hitting it for 70. I think they do some calculation and it's like 40 something million. So like, if you want to defer it, fine, but I think it should still hit for like the year they're playing. But also, I think it'll be really interesting to see how these deferrals, just specifically for the Dodgers, just because it's so huge. I think it's over $1 billion in deferrals now. Like, how does that? impact their ability in 10 years when they're paying Ohtani 68 million, you know, but he's not even on the team anymore. So they're going to be paying all that money out somewhere, somehow. I guess they're hoping to just bank enough of it now to make it work, but it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out and how it kind of impacts them, not in what would it be like 2024 to 2034, but
Yeah.
2035 to 2044.
Well, they're banking maybe on the American dollar to be worth less. Maybe that's what's going on here. Um, I maybe $68 million. Or how much was it that he's going to get?
68. So he gets
$68 million.
two a year while he plays, 68 a year after he's
Yeah,
done.
that's right. And maybe that looks different in 10 years. Maybe that looks like, uh, a little bit less than what it looks now. So, in fact, maybe I
Yeah.
know it will look less, but just a matter of how much. But yeah, I mean, it's it's hard to make a prediction on baseball because again, they do need to play a whole season, and we said this about them last year to an extent, where we said the Dodgers are so good, and then they rolled out Miguel Rojas at shortstop, and they had that one outfielder Pages playing all the time, and it's like there were some holes where you could get to them. Um, and with that being said, this team is a lot harder, it seems, to kind of destruct. And
What I mean, and we were talking about like two holes, quote unquote, holes in the lineup, but
yeah,
they're surrounded by Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and Will Smith. Like, I mean, if you're looking at like, oh, that's where you get them in the 8 and 9 spot, like that, you should be able to get almost any 8 and 9 hitter out.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's going to be health for them and just getting hot in October. We've talked like they're going to be a playoff team. They could win 100 games easily and still rest their guys down the stretch, I
yeah.
think. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they're going to go with a 6-man rotation. It sounds like at least to start, to keep their arms fresh and healthy. So it's just, are they going to be healthy and are they going to be playing good ball in October? Because their season will essentially actually start at the beginning of October for the next
Yeah.
at least 5 or 6 years.
They might get 115 wins. And I'm not even joking about that. Like
It would be
again,
interesting, like if they like took the governor off and like we're not worried about October, like let's see what we can reel off. I don't think you're wrong. I think that that like I could see them winning more than that even if they like went out
yeah,
every game and tried to put it all out there.
yeah, but that's not easy to do considering like what you said when you have that many wins to begin with, you do start taking the pedal off the metal and you start resting guys down the stretch and they're a team that's going to have some guys that are worth being rested. Freeman is going, he's older, and is going to get older. And you have guys in the rotation that just are filled with injury history, and you're probably going to want to shut down Ohtani at some point in the regular season, like things like that,
Yeah.
that are gonna play a big part in this. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Baseball still has to be played, and we could say that they're great on paper, and they are. And again, much more than paper. They're great as is, but we'll see what happens with the Dodgers. The Giants are trying to get their next superstar. They're not going to see him for a few years, but I'm going to butcher his name completely. Josh, do you want to try? Do you want to try it?
I was gonna thinking I was gonna butcher it too, so I was glad that you took the lead, but we'll go with Josuar de Jesus
Joshua, yeah.
Gonzalez.
Joshua de Jesus Gonzalez. 16 years old, signs with the Giants, out of
Really
Venezuela.
really the number one international prospect, I'll say. There a lot of lists counted Sasaki as an international free agent, but he's like a established like major league level talent. He's coming right into the bigs. Most of your international signings are, like you said, this guy's 16 years old. So most of these guys are you're signing them young, developing them, and hopefully you'll see him in the bigs someday. So I mean, most lists had him as like the number one non-Sasaki international
Yep.
guy.
Yeah, no, he is the number two in the 2025 international class behind Sasaki. And there are comps to Francisco Lindor and Jose Reyes. So, I mean, that is definitely something to look at. And he is the highest ranked signee for the Giants in 13 years. And it's a almost a $3 million deal. Um, And I don't know exactly how the international signing stuff works.
Who was there signing 13 years ago?
I have no idea.
No
I have no
worries. I was
idea.
just curious if it listed
The
it
article
there or
I'm
not.
reading doesn't even say it. So I don't even know why you mention it without saying who it was.
Yeah, but
Um, but what Lucius Fox was before that. If I'm not, I'm thinking it's Lucius Fox. That's the one that comes to mind.
maybe.
But Gonzalez switch hitter. We're not going to see him for a while. He's still very young. He'll be 17 for this entire year. Um, but it gives you something to dream on, and I think it's only a matter of time before we see him as a top 20 prospect, top 15, 10 prospect in the sport. Which is fun, and even if that doesn't work out, it gives the Giants something to dream about. And Lucius Fox is the one that was he was at 6 million. Or he's the second. He's
He
the
was
second
10 years
highest
ago,
signing.
but yeah.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, like these guys are kind of lottery tickets. It's hard to look at a 16-year-old and say they're going to be, a star big league player, but it's good to have that kind of like buzz around him, I guess. And hopefully he pans out. I think one thing fans need to think, and Buster's kind of alluded to it, is like they're not gonna. I don't even know if catching the Dodgers at all is in the realm of possibility, but they're not gonna transform the team in like one off season.
nope.
So you can kind of see how they're looking at it and kind of building towards the future. And hopefully Gonzalez will be a big part of that here in 3, 4, 5 years.
That's right. No, for sure. And I guess we could go through this, touch on this real quick. When we were gone, we lost two just baseball legends, and it feels like it's just been a tough, last 15 months or so of just losing baseball legends. And we talked about the legends we lost last year. Before the year ended, we lost Rickey Henderson just a few days before Christmas, and very sudden passing at the age of 65. He had a bout with pneumonia, and just a rough year for A's fans. And Rickey kind of even goes beyond Oakland, even though he is Oakland by definition, was born there, was beloved there. Um, but just loved at every team, every stop he played, was the all-time runs scored leader, the all-time stolen base leader, the man of steel, as they called him, quite literally and figuratively. Um, Best leadoff hitter of all time. Like when we're making lineups and we're playing the who's the best at this, at that, like there, you could go either way with baseball. With power, you could say it's Barry Bonds or Babe Ruth. With most feared, you could say Bob Gibson or Nolan Ryan. But there's really no debate when it comes to best leadoff hitter of all time and the best base stealer of all time. Like everybody, you know, unequivocally says it's Rickey Henderson. So quite the loss.
Yeah, I mean, I got to go when I was a little kid growing up in Sacramento. I got to go to a lot of A's games. When my dad and I had a free weekend, if if whoever was in town, the A's or the Giants, we'd try to catch a game. So, a lot of BART trips into the Coliseum to watch Ricky play. Got to see him play a lot as a kid. Always loved to watch him play. I saw him when he tied the record with Lou Brock. Then they pulled him right away, and everyone booed because they wanted to sell out the next game. Um, it's kind of crazy to look back and think that like, two of the guys you just mentioned is like two of the best players ever, potentially, depending on how you want to measure it. I got to watch play left field for the two teams that I got to go see play all the time. Um, but I mean, Ricky was just, not only was he like on his own level on the field, he was on his own level off the field. So many great quotes and anecdotes, that I knew before his passing, but, kind of fun to kind of see all those come out and revisit those after he kind of left us very surprisingly. And how it all came out was kind of sad because everyone was kind of like, is this real? Is this not real? Um, that kind of sucked, but um, you know, Ricky will never have to see the A's not play in Oakland.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And honestly, shame on those people that were saying that the night before and trying to, and then going back on it and
Yeah, there's
saying,
some stories you don't need to be first on.
exactly, exactly, no doubt. And nobody needs to see the broken heart emoji with no context. It's I don't know, it's rude. But yeah, no, the anecdotes are funny. The Everybody knows the Harold Reynolds story. It's played at nauseum, but a good type of nauseum, uh, if there is one. And there's the one about his first $1 million where he hung it.
Yeah, his check.
Um,
Yeah.
my favorite one is the John Olerud one. That one's classic. But I mean,
Yeah, one of mine is like
funny.
someone told him like something about like John 3:16 or something, like quoted the Bible to him or something. It's like, I don't care about no John hitting 3:16. Ricky's hitting 3:30.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And he played for so long. Like this guy played forever. And
Yeah,
he
he
didn't want
even
to.
played like semi-pro after.
Yeah, he didn't want to stop playing. Like, and it was like 2010. And he's like, Ricky's still not retired, and it's like this guy's he wants to play forever, and he probably could have. Like, he probably could have, and just I wanted to go to the memorial that they had at the Coliseum, but it was raining that day, and I wasn't able to get out there. But no, yeah, really, really sad to hear of his passing. And of course, everybody should go read the Howard Bryant book that I keep telling people to read that I haven't even read yet. So
We could,
empty
I mean,
book
we
right
could do
here.
a whole episode on Ricky. Just go to his baseball reference page and just look at all the bolds, look at all the highlighted golds at the bottom. I mean, he led baseball. This is the one stat I'll throw just because I'm looking at it right now.
Hmm.
He led baseball with 66 steals in 1998 as a 39-year-old.
Insane.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So it's not like I mean, some of his years near the end, they obviously weren't like peak Ricky, but I mean, he was an above average player until he retired at age 44.
Yeah.
So, and also while you're on baseball reference, go check out Bob Uecker as well. We lost him as well recently.
Great.
Um, and you'll go from one of the highest wars ever to one of the lowest wars ever. It's kind of funny though, because great baseball player with Ricky, not great baseball player with Bob Uecker. He even self-deprecated himself many times. Both just bigger than baseball, bigger than life off the field with their personalities, their stories, and I guess that's kind of like the parallel between the two. Obviously, Euchre made his impact more behind the microphone than on the baseball field. But I mean, I knew who Bob Euchre was as a little kid because he was in Major League, and I know that's like your favorite baseball movie.
Yes, that is my favorite baseball movie, Major League. And the scene where, Rick Vaughn, aka Charlie Sheen, throws, way away and walks like four straight guys on 12 pitches and he goes just a bit outside. And like the voice
Yeah,
that he does it in is hilarious. Well,
yeah,
that's just his voice. But I think like all the stuff that he did acting wise and all the shows that he did, it just all came back to like baseball for him. And um I think he homered like off of just a bunch of Hall of Famers too, like two off Koufax, Gaylord Perry, Bob Gibson. Like he had a reputation for doing that. Um, but like even in his later stage, like still called a bunch of games. Usually when broadcasters like scale back, I think he was doing pretty much every home game. Like 90 years old, like
yeah.
lived an amazing life. So shout out to that. But
Yeah, he was almost 91, just a few days short. But
that's right.
since we gave throughout some Rick, one of my favorite Euchre quotes is what was it, like in 1963, I won the award for best minor league player in baseball. The only problem was it was my second year in the big leagues.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then my favorite, so if you go back and watch his Hall of Fame speech when he got the Ford C. Frick Award, it is the best Hall of Fame speech you'll ever find in any sport. It, Tyler, you have to, I'm sure you may have seen it, but it is the best. It's hilarious. He had all these Hall of Famers behind him just cracking up hysterically. Willie Mays
Yeah.
wiping his eyes laughing, Willie McCovey and like all these people behind him just dying of laughter because this guy's just so funny. And one of the things he said there was, my son took after me. He dropped the fly ball in his little league game, and I couldn't have been prouder. And and then he said another one where when he was a kid, him and his dad were, or he described his birth as a nativity scene. And he said that him and his dad would play catch with a football, And as they're throwing the football, they were getting discouraged because it just wasn't working. And then the neighbor came by and was like, here's a pump so you could blow it up. So he was like a comedian, but like everybody's saying that he was like that normally, even behind, outside the camera. So I don't know. I put good amount of money on a good joke. So Bob Uecker, hilarious, and definitely will be missed, no doubt about it. Um, yeah, two really big losses. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then something that happened just recently, going back to free agency, Pete Alonso is back in New York. The polar bear, Pete Alonso, signs with the Mets. Not the deal that he wanted, not the deal that he ended up turning down a few years ago, but he is back in New
Yeah.
York.
2 years, 50 something million. I don't have the exact number in front of me. Great content, I know. But I just made Steven spit up his drink a little
I
bit, if
almost
that
spit out.
counts.
Yeah, I just spit on my microphone now. I'm spitting up.
Propel or water?
I don't have Propel today. I have water. It's like
Okay.
it's water from yesterday. But like
Day old water? Who are you?
stale water? Can water get stale? If that's the case, I'm not drinking another sip of it. I'm putting it down now.
But yeah, obviously not the deal Alonso wanted. Could have had a lot more if he signed a few years ago or maybe even earlier this offseason. But I guess, for him, he's going back to a place where he's familiar with. Probably, I didn't see. Does he have an opt out after the first year?
He might. Yeah, really good
Obviously,
prep.
yeah, obviously trying to kind of reset his value. Obviously, 2 years isn't going to be the last deal he signs. Um, so I mean, I think he's a Boris guy too, right? So I mean, Boris has kind of fumbled the bag for a lot of guys over the last couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of progresses, see how many guys stick with Boris because he's struggling to deliver some of the big contracts he used to be able to. Um, with Alonso, I get the pros and cons. He's feast or famine. He's power or nothing, and you basically have to lock him into either first base or DH. So I mean, very great at what he does well, but other than that, you're not getting much. So teams kind of are kind of seeing that, I guess.
Yeah, just not the guy you wanted to commit a big contract to of that magnitude. And like it's no knock on him. Like what he does is what he does, and that's just who he is. And but at the same time, I don't think that it would be worth that to pay an eventual DH, um, or just a player with his profile. The players that are getting paid have a very different profile than Pete Alonso. Um, Now I think he's worth a little bit more than what he got, but still a really good sign that he's back with the Mets. Like some things are, I do wish happen, and that is one of them that I wished happened. I think he likes it there, and you always like to be in a place um, where you're like a little bit more comfortable. Um,
Mhm.
so that's a good thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, it makes the Mets probably puts them out of the Alex Bregman conversation, I'd imagine. Bregman's still out
Yeah.
there. There's
Yeah.
a situation.
Bregman's kind of like the Will Smith gif from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where he's like the only guy in the living room now.
Yeah,
Like
well,
Bregman's it. He's like the last one standing. So we'll see where he goes.
yeah, and he's trying to get his options up there, saying he could play second base, but maybe the Mets aren't, maybe they're not out of it. Maybe they could have a situation where Vientos could DH and something along those lines. But I think Bregman's perfect fit is no doubt about it in Boston. I mean, yeah, you could move Devers to first. His power is mostly to the pull side. He would love the Green Monster. Like it makes total sense to put Bregman in Boston, but um, it seems like the Astros. I don't know if you saw that, but the way their GM is talking about Bregman is now in past tense, where it's like, oh, when
Yeah.
we used to have Bregman or something like that, or we lost Breg. One of the guys we lost was Bregman, so
Yeah.
not a good sign there. And I think I put him back in Houston on my board.
So did I.
Yeah. So I don't know. Sometimes
But
reunions just make sense, and that one kind of made sense. But Altuve was like, "Hey, I'll play left field if you come and play second." So I
did
don't know.
Altuve say that?
Yes, and they're gonna
Wow.
he's gonna get some reps in left field. So Jose Altuve, who's a Hall of Fame second baseman, is going to get some reps in left field. So that's a very fun thing. Um, and then one of the other things we wanted to touch on, I guess we could touch on it quickly, was some more Rob Manfred news. And we love Rob Manfred here on the Shutdown Inning. He's one of our favorites, and we just can't talk enough glowing things about Robert and Bobby and Bobby Manfred and all that he brings to the table. Just a flawless human. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about is his recent comments on the salary cap. And he says that fans are concerned that there is not one. And Tyler, I'm going to ask you the question: are we concerned that there's no salary cap? Because I'm not.
I wouldn't say I'm concerned, and I wouldn't say even that the salary cap would be my concern as far as payroll goes. You know, commissioners work for the owners, so obviously he's going to phrase anything along salary lines as salary cap because that helps the owners. But I think fans are more concerned about the deferrals thing, and how that actually works, and kind of what we've talked about many times. So I don't want to get too far into it. And also, like, you can't just put a salary cap in. You need a salary floor if you're going to do that, because you got to make the teams that aren't spending spend if you're going to make the teams that are spending not spend as much. The players would never agree to just a salary cap with like no floor. And also, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into cap. So yeah, not concerned. And I wouldn't say the salary cap would even be like the top of that list. So just Robbie gonna Robbie.
Yeah. Do you ever, those situations where like you want to say something for the longest time or you want to do something for the longest time, and then when there's an excuse for you to do it, you like pounce on it? Like the Dodgers spending this money, like Rob Manfred has been wanting to say the quiet part out loud for the longest time, going since he's been with Major League Baseball, and everybody around him thinks the same way. And then he's like, "Oh, this is my opportunity to talk about the salary cap and how we need one." It's like, oh God. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody's concerned. Nobody's concerned at all.
Fire
Um,
Rob Manfred.
yep, except for Rob Manfred. Let's do our ups and downs. We have three ups and three downs that we want to kind of go over here. I'll start with the downs. My down number one is the fact that Rob Manfred, we're going to stay on Rob because he is a down. He is promoting John Fisher to the executive council of something for Major League Baseball. I got to check the exact what he's exactly getting promoted to, but it seems like higher power in Major League Baseball on this executive council. Um, Here it is. MLB owners have, so it's not just Manfred, but all the rest of the MLB owners have elevated A's owner John Fisher to their executive committee. Why are we elevating John Fisher?
Like, they should be trying to get John Fisher out of baseball,
Yes.
not ingrain him further. Like,
He relocated his Major League Baseball team, which is not a good thing. And like,
still
is
has
the
no
opportunity
plan in Vegas.
exactly? He
He has
poorly
concepts
construct
of a plan.
concepts of a plan. That's hilarious. Uh, just no planning whatsoever on the Vegas thing. Like, okay, I understand whether you want to make the excuse where it's like the opportunity in Sacramento and the opportunity in Vegas. Like, there's opportunity in there, and we're excited about it. I get that part of it. But the part that I don't get is when you move a franchise, usually it's because of a negative thing that happened in that city. And usually you have blood on your hands. And the fact that you can move a franchise and then get elevated into another position of power sets an awful precedent. I mean, let's
Yeah.
be honest here. I mean, that's insane. That's a crazy thing to reward a guy for. And if you want to say he's not rewarding it, he is. That's a direct, like, what has John Fisher done in the last 10 years outside of this whole relocation thing that has given, like, he doesn't show his face.
Like,
Is he even involved in the baseball, like, making decisions? I don't know.
yeah, it's mind-boggling to think about. Like, I I don't like John Fisher doesn't even want to do what's best for like his own team. How does he think that he's gonna want or know what's best for like baseball as a whole? Like, a guy just failed in a city, whether that was intentional or not, and now you're like, hey, we should get your input on the rest of the league too. Like that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, Vegas, it's not going to happen.
I
That's
don't
my
think so. I've
bold
said it
prediction for
like,
that's my
yeah,
bold prediction. It's not going to happen. We don't even know what the concepts are right now of that plan. Sacramento just I think it's going to end up being a long-term destination. I don't know what happens with that ballpark.
I think Vegas will eventually get a team. It just won't be the A's.
I agree. I agree. Okay, my second down, my down number two. So that was my down number two. Pat Holberg is an MLB umpire, or
Was an MLB
we could use
umpire.
past tense in that now, was an MLB umpire, and he is no longer an MLB umpire because of a an investigation that's going on, or an investigation that happened involving gambling and him spending
I,
quite a bit of money.
yeah, I
Um,
think it was like a shared account with a friend.
yeah, shared account with a friend, which is always a good idea, right?
Yeah. And then that friend bet on some baseball games, but he didn't know about it.
He did not know about it, which is, the shared account. Maybe he didn't even know they were sharing an account, Tyler. Maybe he did not even know that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm trying to find the list of details here that were
Maybe you
in
and I should start like a joint Instagram.
exactly, and just I don't know what you're gonna do on it.
I just like, why would you need a shared account with a buddy to gamble?
Yeah,
Like,
no, exactly. And by the way, he's one of the best umpires statistically. And I know the boxes are pretty subjective because, I don't know how they get judged. It's not public, but from the ones that people try to say is the strike zone, he's rated very well, and he called a perfect game in the World Series, which is very cool. But yeah, no, it's just not a good situation, but it's not surprising because Major League Baseball is in bed with DraftKings and FanDuel, and when you see those advertisements across the ballpark, and then God help one of your employees takes part in that world and they get punished, that there is some
yeah,
hypocrisy that goes on there.
they want their
Um,
cake and eat it too.
yeah, yeah, no doubt. So I figured I'd put him on a down, but he shared betting accounts, and when you share betting accounts, there's a problem that goes with that, especially when you're an umpire and you have a direct involvement in the game. Like that
Yeah.
is, it was only a matter of time before that's happened. Didn't it happen to another umpire? Like, wasn't there another umpire that got investigated for this?
I think so. Can't recall the name or anything, but I know this
Um,
isn't the first time there's been kind of whispers or involvement in this capacity.
yeah, just that's pretty horrendous, actually. All right, and then another three, Hal Steinbrenner. We're gonna give Hal Steinbrenner a three, or a three, a down. For number three. He made comments regarding the Los Angeles Dodgers spending. And he said that um this is what he said. He said, quote, "It's difficult for most of us owners to be able to do the kind of things that they're doing. We'll see if it pays off. They still have to have a season relatively injury free for it to work out for them. And it's a long season, as you know. And once you get to the postseason, anything could happen. We've seen that time and time again. So we'll see who's there at the end." Okay. What do you mean about being able to compete? You were just able to
Like,
compete with them in the World Series.
yeah, does he know his last name is
His
Steinbrenner
last
and
name is
like
Steinbrenner.
what the Steinbrenners did like 25, 30 years ago? Like they were like Dodgers light. Like they weren't spending as crazily as the Dodgers. But they were the only team doing it back then. Like everyone was like, "Oh, the Yankees," and now everyone's like, "Oh, the Dodgers." So it's just kind of funny that he's now saying, "Well, this isn't fair." And I think the Yankees are still the most valuable baseball franchise. I don't think the Dodgers have caught them there. If they have, it's still very close. So we're talking about like billions and billions and billions of dollars. So it's just funny to hear the Yankees, any team really, because man, these owners are all billionaires. They could spend if they wanted, but especially the Yankees owner with the last name Steinbrenner, kind of talking about other teams spending isn't fair.
Yeah, and with their the very stable RSN with Yes Network and all the other things, the Yankee brand, they're always going to be in a pretty good spot. and yeah, just a down, just a tone deaf thing, I think. All right, how about the ups? Let's end it
Okay,
on a high note.
let's do it. We should have restructured the downs and put number two at number three, so then we can then pivot to another gambling
Yes.
thing. But up number one, I have Ippy Mizuhara sentenced to 57 months in prison for the whole Shohei Ohtani debacle. Again, another shared gambling account, except it's been proven that Ohtani didn't know it. Did you hear the audio of him calling in impersonating Ohtani?
I did.
It's a $200,000 car loan for a friend.
Exactly.
The reason I'm putting this up is like I'm glad that Otani's been kind of is like in the clear on this. It would have been terrible for baseball, as much as I wish he played somewhere else besides where he plays. Like baseball needs guys like Otani, and so I'm glad that he's kind of out of it now. And Ippy is getting three hots in a cot for the next almost 5 years.
Three hots and a cot. Yeah. No, definitely an interesting thing. I am surprised at how quickly it boiled over. I will say that. Um, and the fact that it's not even a year since that happened is insane. It feels like 3 years ago. But yeah, just not a good situation. And I don't know if we'll. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I know when people start sentences like that, it usually ends up resulting in a conspiracy theory. But I'm not too sure if we'll ever know what exactly happened.
Yeah, I don't
So
think so either. And I think Ippy probably won't serve 57 months and he'll probably be taken care of when he gets out.
yeah, no, exactly. He'll be back in baseball, or is he banned from baseball? I don't even know if he was put on the
Yeah.
ineligible list. Um, but yeah, I mean, if they did get away with something there, like some top-notch planning, like the fact that investigators weren't able to snoof any, like I mean that would be pretty impressive in its own right. But um, yeah, Shohei Ohtani's good at everything. I guess that's how it works, and his interpreter did not get away with this one. So
Yeah.
yep.
Up number two, I'm this is more of like a personal one for me, I think. I'm shouting out Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, and Charlie Morton for all being over 40 and getting contracts this offseason. The three players older than me are remaining in the game, so I have another year at least of being younger than some major leaguers, which I know is like the opposite of the spectrum that you're on, Steven. And in like when we're doing episode number 912 in 20 years, and you'll be talking about how, oh, I'm still younger than some random player. But it's crazy to see these guys still out there. Verlander and Scherzer basically got identical deals. Scherzer just signed with the Blue Jays, Morton to the Orioles earlier in the offseason. Just kind of cool to see guys who, they're not all who they used to be, obviously, but they're not just out there hoping to have some quality outings. Like they're still proven major leaguers and they're still doing it, man.
Yeah, no, really cool to see. And of course, Scherzer got 500 grand more than Verlander. And
Because of the Canadian dollars, I think.
yeah, and Morton is in Baltimore. It's a good spot for him. Um, yeah, I think that the pendulum is sometimes there's proof that the pendulum does swing the other way. And as much as there's a youth movement in Major League Baseball right now with not just on the player side, but also in the personnel and coaches and front office. Every once in a while, you get inspired by the pendulum swinging the other way, with a Ron Washington getting hired and a Bruce Bochy being back, um, and older players like it sucks when you're a fringe guy who is still putting up like average numbers when you're 33, 34, and you can't even get an invite to spring training. That sucks. But there's definitely a downside or an upside to seeing some of these older guys get in, and it's also just a legacy thing. Um, I would, this going back to the Verlander thing real quick. As much as we're kind of questioning what he's going to give the Giants, I know what he's going to give me, and he's going to give me like I want to go to a game when Justin Verlander's pitching. Like even though he's
Yeah.
41 years old, it's still Justin Verlander, and I hope fans kind of feel the same way about that. And it's not like it's not the Steph Curry effect to where it's like buying a ticket just to see Steph Curry. I don't think baseball is a sport like that. And I don't know if, aside from Otani, who in baseball is even like that, but uh, it just feels like one of those guys where it's like I got to see a Verlander start, that type of
Yeah.
thing. Um,
I mean,
and who
oh,
would
go
you
ahead.
want to? Would you rather see a Verlander start, or would you rather see an opener? Right? It's a
Yeah.
trade-off, just as a baseball fan.
Yeah. And I think, the last thing I was thinking on this is, like you mentioned, there's guys that are like, middle of the road players in their early mid 30s who don't even get invites. So to extend your career this far, you have to be good to still garner getting offers, but
Hmm.
also you with all the money that these guys make nowadays, you really have to love baseball and want to keep playing baseball to be pitching into your, mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s. So it's not, they could have retired like 5 years ago and been set for life financially. So it's kind of cool just to think of like, this is their life, this is what they love to do, and they're able to do it and do it well for a long period of time because they don't need to pitch anymore if they didn't want to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no doubt, and it's only a matter of time before we get the yearly Clayton Kershaw 1 year deal Dodgers
Yeah.
announcement. Even
Yeah.
though he'd be
He'll be
their
their
seventh or
eighth
eighth,
starter.
yeah, their seventh or eighth or ninth starter, and um, we'll see what happens with that. But um, yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where um, you like to see guy like I liked seeing Albert Pujols hit when he was 42 years old, 43 years old.
Yeah.
Still productive player, had over like an 800 OPS, still hitting homers in big spots. Milestones coming up, and for Verlander, I think it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah. And then move into the last one, up number three. I think this is like the ultimate up for an off season is the Super Bowl's on Sunday. This is the last Sunday, the last weekend without baseball until November, Steven. Pitchers and catchers start reporting next week. We'll have like actual footage from spring training facilities by this time next week, man.
Yeah, no, fun times. I've never been to spring training. I would love to cover it this year. If that happens, we shall see. Yeah, no, spring training's too long, first and foremost. It's one of those things where it's mainly for pitchers. I mean, teams will tell you this. It's mainly for pitchers trying to get their innings in, trying to get ramped up for opening day. Hitters, they're ready to roll by the second week. They just put them in a game and give them 35 at bats and they're going to roll on the opening day fine. And,
Yeah.
but it's a fun time because you get to see players in new uniforms. There's storylines. There's, spring training, as cliche as this sounds, and it's really cliche because you hear it from all 30 teams. Every team in spring training feels not necessarily like they have a shot at winning a World Series, but there's a positiveness no matter what team you're on. And the Chicago White Sox are going to go in the spring training after having a horrendous season last year. And they're going to go in the spring training and they're going to have a positive outlook on the season.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
they start tied for first place. So
tied for, I wasn't going to go that cliche, but you beat me to it. That was pretty good.
and
Um,
the other cliche that our good friend Jeff Young put out a week or two ago was like we're just weeks away from like every player telling us they're in the best shape of
Best
their
shape of their
lives.
lives. Yep. Yeah. He looks really good. He shed 15 pounds and then he's
Jeff
hitting.
did? No, I'm just
Yeah. Jeff Young. Yeah. No. Jeff Young is lean in a machine. Okay, I don't
a
even know
lean,
what's happening.
mean Giants machine. That
Lean,
Jeff
mean, Jeff
Young.
Young, really good. Follow him. Baseball Jeff. He just came be our
But
spot still. I've heard him.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, last weekend without baseball, man.
Yeah. Shut it down
Um,
again. We touched on a lot there. We had a lot to catch up on and we
And I'm willing to make a promise to our listeners. Our next episode after this one will not be nearly as wide of a gap between episode 55 and 56 as there was between 54 and 55.
yes. We talked about the Juan Soto signing on this episode. So
Yeah,
if that gives you any indication on where we were, then yeah.
where we were was not behind these microphones, but we're back.
Yeah, we're back. We're back. I think we shut it down again.
We did it.
Yeah.
Happy
Well,
New Year, Stephen.
happy Happy New Year, and by the time I see you, it will be we'll be doing our trade deadline show.
Right.
Oh gosh. Well, yeah, everybody could go ahead and listen to the podcast. Follow the podcast on Twitter at @shutdown_inning, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, all that good stuff. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.
That's what's up.
Yeah, babe.